the recording is on. At least it certainly should be. It is. So now I'll bring the slides back up. All right. This is the University of Mount Olive, Business 410, Strategic Management. And today we are going to hear a presentation by 3 students who have studied and made a strategic assessment of PepsiCo. And at this point, I will introduce the coordinator and MC for this presentation, Mr. Derek Lucci?
Yeah, Lucci.
Lucci. Okay. Derek, it's all yours.
All right. So, like Dr. Remy said, we're going to go over the strategic position of PepsiCo, and alongside me is Katie Kelly and Jeremy Fajan. We'll go on to the next slide. Let Katie take this one.
Okay. So during this presentation, this is just what we're going to cover: the background and mission of Pepsi, the economic analysis, market analysis, industry analysis, capabilities analysis, goals, strategic objectives, and strategies of Pepsi.
So we'll start with the background on this next slide.
Okay, so
let Jeremy go.
Thank you, Derek. This is a little bit about PepsiCo, the history of PepsiCo. So PepsiCo was originally established in 1898 by Caleb Bradham, who invented PepsiCo for his pharmacy, which I thought was very interesting. And it was also located in New Bern when he created PepsiCo. It also, in 1905, Robert Fowler became the first franchisee to start the bottling Pepsi-Cola company. As you can see throughout this slide, that PepsiCo had did a lot of acquisitions throughout the years. For instance, the main one, there's a couple of main ones in this slide, but one of the main ones is PepsiCo and Frito-Lay merge, which was Frito-Lay was a snacking company who produces corn chips, potato chips, and other snacks. So it gave PepsiCo another way they can do business and by selling chips. Another acquisition that they did was Walker and Smith's, were 2 large British snack food makers, such as potato chips, and it made PepsiCo the largest snack food industry in Europe. And then another one was Quaker and Oats, which was a big acquisition for PepsiCo because they had Gatorade. And this was to attract the sports and athletes. And actually, Quaker Oats and Gatorade held 80% share of the sports drink market. And then Pepsi goes on to acquire Tropicana to compete with Coca-Cola, who owned it Minute Maid. At the time, Coca-Cola and Tropicana were the biggest brand juice companies in the world. And Pepsi just recently, in March 11th, this past month, they acquired Rockstar Energy. So, Derek, you can continue on to the next slide.
On the next slide, Katie here.
Okay, so this is a little diagram I put together of products and services for Pepsi. And so the roads are the paths the products go to get to the customers. So they have a certain path they take. You know, they don't all follow down the same road to get from how it gets to the vending machines, to the grocery stores and convenience stores, and to the bakery. They all have a different path they take to get there. And so as you can see, like from the plant to get to the grocery stores or convenience stores, they have to go through the powder, the bottling plant, and to get, like, for the bakery, they have to go through different processes, and versus when to get to vending machines.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of extra information here. You can see the two routes on the left are really the same route. They're going from the concentrate plant. In one case, syrup, and the other case, powder. But the concentrate plant just basically makes either a syrup or a powder that can supply a great many bottling plants, hundreds virtually. So it's a pretty low-cost operation. The costs are in the bottlers or in the perhaps even in the restaurants. But over on the right side, the bakery, those bakeries are owned by Frito-Lay, and they include complete processes. Every one of those bakeries is a manufacturing facility, has equipment, it incurs all sorts of costs, and so you can just imagine that the costliness of the bakeries producing a finished product before it gets to the grocery store is a lot less than the cost of the syrup plants, the concentrate plants, which produce an ingredient that goes to the factory, the bottling plant, which produces the product that then goes to the grocery store. So you've got a low-cost operation on the left and a high-cost operation on the right.
Okay, and so Pepsi, this is just some of their top earning brands. Pepsi sells about 100 different brands. And one side note I actually got from my dad, some additional information about Gatorade, is he used to work for Davenport, and he was a mechanic, so he knew a lot about transportation. And when Pepsi bought Gatorade, Pepsi didn't really consider the transportation logic behind of it, because when they bought Gatorade, they did not they said they were the only ones who wanted to deliver Gatorade. They didn't want like US Foods to deliver, or Davenport or McLean's. And so this caused issues because like grocery stores were running out of Gatorade because they couldn't get the Pepsi trucks there fast enough to ensure like their stock and everything. Okay. And so this is just some drink products by Pepsi that are made within the U.S. So you have, Pepsi, Pure Leaf, Mountain Dew, Gatorade.
Next slide.
And then drinks that are produced by Pepsi outside of the U.S. So you can see China, their Pepsi cans looks a lot different than ours. In Europe and Asia, Pepsi Gold, it was designed in 2006. Go back up, Derek.
You want China? Or do you want this
Go
one?
back up, China.
Got to keep stepping through these.
Okay. And so you can see, the difference between, what was made in the U.S. and not within the U.S. You can go ahead. So you have in Mexico, their Pepsi. In Japan, you can see definitely theirs is a unique flavor. And then in Russia.
It's hard for me to imagine what a cucumber drink would taste like. Oh, well.
Okay, and then this is the last one, which was produced in Germany, Italy, and Spain. So Pepsi did some fun-to-eat products. So this is what they produce, like Doritos, Lay's, Cheetos. You can go ahead. And then they also did a healthier option. So you can see the Life cereal, Quaker Oats, Smart Foods, the white cheddar popcorn. You can go ahead. And then also I found this, that it could be broke down into, they did a fun for you, a better for you option, and then a good for you option.
And this was a concept that was developed by Indra Nooyi, the previous chief executive, who had the idea that the market wanted more healthy options.
Okay, and so this is just Pepsi, how their logo has changed from when they started to today.
All right, so this next slide is going to talk about the strong position in growth categories and the balanced geographic mix of Pepsi. So PepsiCo, they demonstrate that they have a clear global #1 position. With beverages, they believe they have a #2 position, and they have leadership, obviously, as we'll talk about later on in the position, with their marketing campaigns. And on the right side of this, it talks about the geographic mix. So in developing markets, Mexico, they have 6% of their net revenue come from, Russia, 5%. The US totals about 58% of their total net revenue. One thing that was interesting is China and India are both missing from this. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But something to keep an eye out there for is that China is missing from their developed or their developing and emerging markets for soft drinks.
Okay, this was the 2018 financial highlights. So this shows their net revenues and their operational profit. And I just compared the two from 2018 to 2019. You can click to the next slide. And to see if they grew, if their net revenue increased or decreased, or, broke down, just to see where, their numbers increased and decreased in Europe or Africa, and with the food and the beverages, see if how their percentages went up or down.
Katie, I think one of the most impressive items on this and the previous slide is the very top line on the right side. You've got Frito-Lay contributing 25% of revenue, but if we go down to operating profit, 45%. So those snack foods are profitable and account for a lot of PepsiCo's profits. And if we recognize that Latin America, Europe, Africa, Asia, those are mixtures of beverages and snack foods, it's pretty obvious that Frito-Lay and snack foods, if we include Quaker, contribute more to PepsiCo's profit than beverages, even though PepsiCo is more often thought of as a beverage company than a snack food company. If we think in terms of profitability, it's a snack food company more than a beverage company.
Right.
So this next slide is going to just summarize those financials behind in the last two slides. So Frito-Lay, they have 25% of PepsiCo's total sales, but 50% of the operating profit. The beverages portion of PepsiCo has 33% of the sales and 22% of the operating profit. Quaker Foods only has 4% of sales and 6% of operating profit. And PepsiCo International has 38% of the sales but 22% of the profit.
All right, so in order to understand why Pepsi operates, we must first understand the mission of why Pepsi operates.
So with this one, it's from the PepsiCo's website. Their mission is to create, this is just their literature, the throwaway stuff, to create more smiles with every sip and every bite. The vision, they want to become a global leader. And how they're going to do it, they're going to become faster, stronger, better. And we'll go on to the next slide.
So the main reason for the mission is to understand the organization's existence. As we analyze in the next few slides, Abel's model is the Pepsi's mission. It will identify the who, the what, and the how. So Abel's model is based on the three things: serve markets, the unmet customer needs, and the distant competencies. So as you can see in this slide, Pepsi wants to attract young adults, which is the age of 25 through 34, younger teenagers between 11 and 17 years old, and of course the athletes with Gatorade. So that's how it their main focus is on those seller groups. Where they want to market all their products is through supermarkets such as Walmart, Dollar General, and Costco's. You have a lot of Pepsi products also in convenience stores, which is gas stations, anything that you can think of as far as convenience stores. And it also goes through vending machines, which we have a lot of those at the college and other places where you can purchase the Pepsi products. And also food chain services, which is Pizza Hut, all the restaurants that serve Pepsi products.
Yeah, the problem with the fast foods, in case we don't get into it later, is that there was a time when PepsiCo owned fast food chains, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. And at one time, Coca-Cola realized that it could exploit that and went to the fast food chains and pointed out that PepsiCo was competing with them. And they began to discontinue putting Pepsi-Cola into their restaurants. And so PepsiCo was forced to spin off those 3 fast food chains. And therefore, Pepsi-Cola today can be found primarily just in those 3 restaurants, because when they sold them, they put long-term contracts in them. So you'll get Pepsi-Cola in Kentucky Fried, Pizza Hut, and Taco Bell, but you sure won't get it in McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's, because they threw Pepsi-Cola out when they realized that PepsiCo was a competitor. Little basic rule there: don't compete with your customers.
Okay, so next we have the customer needs, which is the beverages. You got the carbonated beverages, which is Coca-Cola is actually the top company who produces carbonated beverages. Also, you have the non-carbonated beverages, which is water, which is Pepsi decided to acquire and introduce the water called bubbly, which is a non-carbonated drink. And then you have the unconfidential beverages, which is Starbucks coffee, Lipton tea, and Pepsi's Cafe, which Pepsi Cafe is like a sort of an energy drink that has coffee and along with some soda ingredients, which is to provide an energy boost for their customers. Next, we have the food products, which is all the things that Katie had mentioned, the fun for you.
Yeah, we don't want to spell these out. I'm concerned that if we read these slides in great detail, the presentation is going to take a very long time. I think you can allow the people who look at the presentation to read the slides, and you can just point out on slides like this that these are the items that PepsiCo offers, you know?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what kind of competences does it take to meet those needs?
Well, of course, it's going to take nutrition, research and development laboratories, which these laboratories cost a whole lot, which is their top one is in China, which is a big manufacturing company, research and development company for them. They spent over $45 million just to run this company. So, of course, you have to look at the taste preference and the food and beverage preference. You got to get an idea of what your customers like. And so, with that, next slide. Okay, so this is the little propaganda. It comes straight from the Pepsi's website, but this is who they're mainly trying to target, such as the customers, consumers, and shareholders. This is some of the policy that Pepsi has on their website as well. It's according to how they want to govern themselves in the market, who they're trying to reach. and their policy and procedure. All right. So vision, this is just the long-term vision. They want to remain a leader in the non-carbonated beverages industry, such as water, juices, and all the
Yeah,
other
so if they accomplish that mission, perhaps this is the way the company will look in the future as they're accomplishing their mission and achieving their goals.
Right. Yes, sir.
So the economic analysis, these are going to go pretty quick. So we'll go on to this next slide. So I did GDP based on purchasing power parity of the shares of the world. So the EU is pretty large. As we saw before, Pepsi didn't have a lot of profit from there. The US obviously is a large one. China has one of the best or one of the highest GDP per purchasing power parity of the world. India is growing rapidly, as you'll see later on. And then I just put the rest of the world. India is the growth market of the future is the key takeaway. Go on to the next slide. So here's the real GDP growth rate in 2019. As you can see, the two markets that are growing the fastest is China and India. Go on to the next slide. So real GDP growth rate, and I projected this out to 2024. You can see in about 2019 is when India is actually going to start growing faster than China. China's been in a little bit of a decline, but India, they're not really slowing down much.
No, the contrary. And it's really remarkable that you've got these two fast growth countries, India and China, and they're the difference between those countries and the others in the bottom, looks like kind of a piece of rope down there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all those others sort of entangled, and India and China definitely separate from the crowd.
So here's some of the GDP per capita in thousands. So I did first the EU, USA, and Russia. Russia's still lagging behind a little bit, and that's going to matter when we talk about the PepsiCo's acquisition in Russia. EU still growing, and so is the US. Next slide. So currently, China is the growing market of today, not the future. India will eventually overtake China, and they will be the growing market in the future. So inflation rates are important because high inflation means less income for people to spend on goods like Pepsi, discretionary stuff that they don't necessarily have to have. India has a big struggle with it currently, and so does Russia. So those are two things to watch when investing for Pepsi, watch for when they're investing. Next slide.
Also, these inflation rates influence PepsiCo's decisions on what to sell. Obviously, if inflation is high, it's more difficult for people to afford discretionary goods such as what PepsiCo offers. So it's necessary to offer products that are not as expensive, lower priced products, products that essentially are easier to buy. In a country like the United States, you and I are able to purchase something that would be considered quite expensive in a country such as India or China.
Right. So this is just the inflation rate tracked out. As you can see, Russia, they skyrocketed there for a while just due to political issues. India's is slowly going down, but it looks like it's sort of flattening in 18 and 19. But consistently in the world, they're staying a little bit lower. Unemployment, India does not report their unemployment. I just thought that was interesting to point out there. But as you can see, the EU, the Euro area, they have pretty high unemployment there for a while. But again, everyone is flattening out, so that means people are working and they have money, will have money to spend.
A footnote that will not be on the test, but the world of professional economists and including the International Monetary Fund is well aware that India's economic statistical capabilities are nothing like in the U.S. and Europe, and they're frankly, not only do they don't report unemployment, we're very skeptical of the statistics that come out of India, First, because they may report what they want us to see rather than the truth. And secondly, their methods are so poor, they don't even know what the truth is.
Next slide again, it's just the unemployment rate for 2019. And you can see the Euro area is the highest. So with that, you got to think when you're investing a new factory, that might be a place. If you want to invest and build a factory in Europe, there's going to be a large population that is looking for work. So that just opens the door for that.
That's a good point.
Now we're going to talk about some of the market analysis. Go to the next slide. So obviously Pepsi-Cola, they sell soft drinks. So soft drink consumption, and these are in the millions. Sorry, I forgot to put that on there. But it's Mexico and the United States are the highest, followed by Brazil, Russia, and Japan. As you can see, some of those growing markets that I said, they're pretty small numbers. China's 53, India's 16. So that is definitely room for growth. They're not consuming a lot. Might open the door for more growth there. Next slide. This is just the U.S. soft drink consumption. And as you can see, it peaked for a while, but now it's actually dropping dramatically. So that's something that PepsiCo needs to be worried about. And they have a strategy in place to deal with this increase in soft drink consumption. And we will talk about that later. So here's another one that's talking about some of the soft drink issues. So a lot of people, they have switched from, if you look at 5 years ago, 18 and 29-year-olds, a lot of them have switched from drinking soft drinks to healthier options. And obesity rates. A lot of people that drink soft drinks are more likely to be obese due to the amount of sugar that's in it. And as you can see, the top 2 soft drink consumers are actually the top 2 obese nations, with the US and Mexico.
That's a big point. And Mrs. Nguyen, when she was developing the fun for you, better for you, and good for you, she was very impressed by this.
So with obesity and high sugar intake comes diabetes. So looking at the nations with diabetes, Mexico is one of the highest nations with diabetes. Then you can see some of the South American nations, some of the poorer nations in South America. Then the United States is a high diabetes amount. Russia, again, is about the same with the United States. So the nations that drink more soft drinks normally have higher diabetes rates. So this slide here is the growth of the healthy snack markets, and it's projected out to 2025. As you can see, it's growing. People are trying to be healthier, not trying to be obese anymore. That's been a big public issue for a long time. So as you can see, this market is going to grow. So Pepsi is well positioned in this market to take advantage of this growth. Go to the next slide. So the population's in millions, really matters. I'm not sure why the United States got cut off there, but it's supposed to be United States, not United. Mexico there. As you can see, China and India are the 2 biggest population nations in the world. So we'll go down to the next slide. So the populations of Japan, Mexico, the Russian Federation, United States, and the Euro area are pretty stable. They're not growing dramatic.
I'm sorry.
Yep, that's fine. We're right here now.
Okay.
Nope, go back up one. All right. So, all right, now down one more.
Okay.
Right here. Okay. So one thing I needed, or we need to point out, while China's population, they're doing the 1 child per family policy, India is not. India is growing with no signs of slowing down. So as future managers and strategic analysts and businesses, they need to know that India is that market of the future. If they can go in there and they can serve the needs of the Indian population, they will have money coming out of their ears, really, with the population that's growing there. So we're down to the next slide.
There's a point that I've made in our discussions, and it's important enough that I think probably it's worth repeating. And that is that because of the 1 child policy, And simply the culture in China and the young population, there's no desire to have two children. The Chinese seem to be pretty satisfied to have one child. So projections have China's population by mid-century perhaps moving down all the way down to 1.2 billion, which is still a lot of people, 1,200,000,000. But if India's population continues to grow naturally and to increase, because it doesn't have anything like a one-child policy, you could see population easily reaching 1.6 billion in India, or even more. But if we just use those low estimates, 1.6 billion versus 1.2 billion, that means that India has 400 million people more than China at some point, by or before mid-century. So 400 is 1/3 more than 1.2 billion. And the consequence of that, India with 1/3 more people than China, changes the dynamics, market dynamics dramatically. India becomes for sure the largest country in terms of population, and eventually its economics catch up with the more mature countries. And so certainly not tomorrow, but at some point in the future, India indeed could be the largest economy in the world. And that would make it larger than China, and for sure larger than the United States. So the dynamics there in terms of how companies like PepsiCo make their decisions to participate in economies and make investments in countries change dramatically from the kind of decision making that occurs today. Sorry that was so long-winded, but it is a very important point for long-range planning.
On this next slide, it talks about the currency exchange rates. And I took this on April 12th of this year. As you can see, the United States dollar is a very strong dollar all across the world. And in industries that we were just talking about, like India, with their high inflation, and Russia, the dollar here can go a lot farther. So sometimes when you invest international, PepsiCo needs to be careful of the currency exchange risk. If they go somewhere and the money drops in value here, or their inflation increases dramatically there, it will matter. Go to the next slide.
Okay, so this is PepsiCo's product cycle. We said that PepsiCo is in the maturity stage, being that they're well established, and because of all their success that they have throughout the beverage and snack industry. So as you can see that, of course, when I mentioned the Pepsi Cafe, that would be, of course, in the introduction stage, because that's one of the new products that they're making currently. And then also Pepsi is coming up with different flavors that they're trying to introduce into the market, even though it has the Pepsi logo, but they're different flavors. The growth will be like Wim Bill Dan, which is the dairy acquisition that they had acquired through Russia. So it's going to continue to grow throughout the years coming up. And then the market, of course, the maturity would be all the stuff that are already out there, like the Pepsi, the Diet Pepsi, and all their other acquisitions that they made, Tropicana, all the major top acquisitions that they have acquired.
A real issue for PepsiCo is how skinny this life cycle curve is on the left side. PepsiCo introduces product after product after product. They've got a very vigorous new product program, and yet when we do BCG matrix or life cycle analysis, that left side always looks pretty skinny. And PepsiCo's really got its work cut out for it to not just introduce new products. That's great, but what PepsiCo needs to do is introduce new products that make it into the growth stage, that expand. And they've got lots of little products, but it's really hard to hit a home run. And so PepsiCo, to solve that problem, has purchased other companies that are in the growth stage.
This next slide introduces like the bottle consumption in the United States. As you can see, it has tremendously grown from the 2000s to 2017, where customers are buying and drinking over at least 42 gallons of water. So it would be it's smart for Pepsi to go into the water industry, which they have with Aquafina and now Bubbly. So that continues to grow. And as you can see, by 2024, it's going to increase by $307 billion in the water industry.
All right, so now we're going to talk about some of the analysis for the industry. So the industry sales in millions. You can see PepsiCo and Coke are the top ones. And you got Kellogg, Monster Beverages down there. But the key takeaway from this, Pepsi and Coke are the giants of the industry, making about 60 billion sales. Go to the next slide. So the snack food market share, this is in North America. So Frito-Lay is PepsiCo's snack food division, and they take up about 18%. And the key thing why I think this is important is because it shows you areas where Pepsi could acquire smaller firms. Like if you look at Mondale, they're probably a little too large for Pepsi to look at. Kellogg or the JM Smucker, they might be one that PepsiCo could actually look at to increase their market share. So go to the next slide. So the beverage market shares, PepsiCo is about 12.4% in North America, Coke 13%. Coke does beat Pepsi in North America market share, but again, it shows areas where PepsiCo can expand. If they look at the Cott brand or Monster Beverages, Treehouse Foods, and we'll talk about some of the possible acquisition targets later on, but that's just a key thing to look at there.
That's a good point.
The next slide. So the grocery market share, Quaker Foods is PepsiCo's biggest grocery market share, so I put them in there at 2.9%. And their grocery share, and this is going to be the products that you go to like a supermarket and you'll see, such as your oatmeal and stuff like that. PepsiCo is not a big brand there. They're really kind of weak compared to some of the other grocery companies. They have room to expand, they have room to grow, but right there, just looking at the brands they have, they're not in the best position on the share of the market. So go to the next slide.
PepsiCo, I think it depends on how you measure this. If we were to consider PepsiCo's shares from Frito-Lay plus Pepsi-Cola, it may have a larger share.
Yeah, I excluded those just because they were in the previous one. I considered Frito-Lay to be more snack foods.
Yes.
Where PepsiCo were the beverages.
Yeah.
So this is focused just on like when you think of to go get groceries that you're gonna get, like the oatmeal and the Quaker products.
Right.
So this is Latin American market share. PepsiCo and most other American companies, they do not really report how each of their divisions are doing those locations. PepsiCo has their division called Latin American Foods.
Right.
In Latin America, PepsiCo has 32.2%. Coke's the next biggest with 14.
Yeah.
Go down to the next slide. In the Europe market share, it's the Europe division. PepsiCo is losing to Coke there also. PepsiCo's 20.8%, Coke's 21.4%. Again, there's still areas where they can grow some of those other companies. The Asia, Middle East, Africa market share, PepsiCo is beating Coke there, 8.4. Coke has 6.4. Again, those other companies with room to grow. We'll go to the next slide. So the BCG matrix for the industry. So energy drinks are some of those ventures or some of the new products that they're bringing in. Like I saw this seaweed snack that they're talking about in some of the Europe markets, and that's something that's a venture that could become a dog if it fails. It could take off and become Pepsi's or the industry's new big product. Health drink and bottled water are currently some of the stars in the industry. They're making the most money for, or they're growing the fastest and increasing their market share. Some of the cash cows, they're consistent, are the snack foods, the chips, soft drinks. But as people become more aware of their weight, aware of obesity, and try to get healthier, these snack foods and soft drinks, they're going to slowly start moving into dogs. Because, again, as people start to eat healthier and drink healthier, they're going to become dogs. They're not going to make as much money. And the bottled water and health foods and health drinks are going to go down and become their cash cows.
I hope that you all can appreciate that on the basis for the BCG matrix is that life cycle matrix that we looked at. So the stars are in the growth stage, the cash cows are in the mature stage, the ventures are down there in the embryonic stage, and the dogs are they're dogs.
Go to the next slide. There we go.
Okay, so we did the Porter's Five Forces, which is to indicate the industry profit potential. So you got the rivalry, you got the threat of entrance. So the competitive rivalry is in the food and beverage industry. Their main competitors are Coca-Cola, Nestor, and Snappa, and Mondelez. But Coca-Cola is their main competitor in the market.
Remember, what we have to do is get right to the bottom line.
Okay, so the conclusion.
And the folks who look at this recording can read the detail, but your conclusion is that rivalry in this industry is pretty high, huh?
Yes, the conclusion is.
Okay.
Yes. So the threat of entries, the conclusion of the threat will be low of the new entries. It is so hard for new companies to start, because of the startup costs in order to enter into the market.
Exactly.
Next, we have the threat of substitutes. So the conclusion for the threat of substitutes would be high because you have the non-carbonated drinks such as water, juice, and milk. So you have a lot of more substitutes that you can take and use compared to carbonated beverages or
Sure. And in fact, that's part of what has impacted PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. Folks have decided that it's unhealthy to drink carbonated beverages, but it's not unhealthy to drink juices, for instance. Just don't forget, and this is something that students often forget, substitutes have to come from other industries. There's no such thing as a substitute. Coca-Cola is not a substitute for Pepsi-Cola. You may think it is, but in terms of the economic theory, a substitute, what we're looking for is a substitute for a carbonated beverage. A substitute for, and a good question is, what's a substitute for bottled water? And lo and behold, you've got coffee and tea and so forth. And snacks, what's a substitute for a Frito-Lay? It's not a potato chip, but it is fruit, right? And the other kinds of things that people eat for snacks besides bakery products. That's always made it very difficult for people to understand substitution, but the economists insist on it.
So the next one is the bargaining power of suppliers. We said that it has a low bargaining power of suppliers, being that there are a lot of suppliers that can produce and supply any beverage and snack that the companies can use. And then the conclusion of bargaining power of buyers, we said there are high bargaining power due to the customers having a lot of options that they can choose from. So
yeah. Who are PepsiCo's buyers?
The customers, which are the stores.
Yeah, exactly. The stores or the restaurants or the convenience store. Yeah, absolutely.
So I did this table, which is a summary of all the things. We took 5 countries and basically rated them on a scale of 1 to 5 of how Pepsi will be able to enter into that market and to see if there's any forces that would down their economy.
Would push down the
Push down
profitability of the industry.
profitability of the
Yeah.
industry, yes.
And
So
where
we
do
said,
you find the forces, in which country do you find the forces to be strongest?
China because of their
Okay.
booming economy and their population.
Okay, and where are the forces that push down profit the least?
We said India because even though they do have the population close to China, they still have a lot of economical issues.
Yeah, but based on your analysis, other people might come up with different answers, but what you've said here is that the economic forces in India are not pushing down profit, and therefore the opportunity for the beverage and snack food industry to profit is much better, much easier than in China. You've said that in China, it's tough to make a profit. And again, I think that what we need to do is just be aware that the purpose of the 5 forces is to take these various 5 economic forces that push down profitability and based on an assessment of them, try to identify countries where profit potentials are relatively high or relatively low. Some people might not agree with you, but you've said that they're pretty high in the United States, meaning that's going to push down profit. So the opportunity for profitability in the US is low, you've said. And you've said that the opportunity for profitability is even lower in China because those forces are so strong. And we can make a killing in India because the forces are so weak. And again, I don't think we want to linger on this exhibit and try to analyze each one of these forces and decide whether you guessed right or wrong. The point is simply to demonstrate that this is how we do it. This is how we identify countries where profit potentials may be relatively high or relatively low.
Next slide. So this is basically a conclusion of the table. We said that China can push down the profit potential, and we also said that India is low, currently low, and they will have a better chance of doing business in India.
Okay.
This is another
Pretty much
conclusion
the
of the
same
project.
thing.
Yes, pretty much the same thing. So next, we have the critical success factors. This separates the winners from the losers. This is what makes Pepsi more appealing versus their other competitors, which is they have the media advertising, the research and development, and
Be careful now. This affects the whole industry, not just Pepsi. So these
right.
are the critical success factors, as you say, that separate winners from losers. And so these are the issues that Pepsi has to come to grips with in its strategy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So of course you have the taste, and then okay, you can go ahead. The next slide.
Who's
Keep going
doing
to the next one.
capabilities?
If you go to the next slide, we'll keep going on it.
Okay.
So this is part of what separates the winners from the losers in the industry. So as you can see, Pepsi has a dominant position. All of them does compared to their brand size. the research and development. Pepsi is overall, Pepsi is the best company to go with.
Are there any exceptions here? Is there any anything that?
But there's a one key point about PepsiCo. They have a lot of high leverage, which is their financial health. So it'd be tough for Pepsi to make a lot of decisions because of the high risk that they have.
Okay.
Not sure why that slide is.
Yeah, that belongs. Let me fix that for you. Let's see. Capabilities would go there, right? This would be the summary of the capabilities, and we've talked about those real well. So I guess we're now, oops, more 5 forces. This looks like almost a duplicate.
Yeah,
It is
it's a duplicate. It is a duplicate.
So here we are with the 5 forces, and now we're talking about what does CPG mean?
It's consumer packaged goods.
Packaged goods, okay.
So the point of this chart here is to talk about some acquisition targets for Pepsi. So Pepsi is currently the 7th best performing consumer packaged goods company. And I just wanted to point out a couple on the smaller side or even the medium size, like Red Bull. Everyone knows who Red Bull is. Everyone knows who Monster is. Those are some targets that Pepsi could use to expand. If they want to look at some smaller companies, there's the Daisy brand. We're going to talk a little bit more later about Pepsi getting involved into the dairy industry. That'd be a way for them to get involved in the dairy industry locally. So again, just some targets or some areas that Pepsi could look to expand. We'll go to the next slide.
Very good.
So PepsiCo sales, they had a flat week trend since 2012 due to the US sanctions in Russia. But they had that big growth in 2011 due to a 30% increase in ad spending and the acquisition of that windmill dam in Russia, which is a dairy producer. So with the purchase of that company, it's caused their profits sort of bellow out just due to the sanctions and everything that the world really has on Russia. So it hasn't really allowed PepsiCo to expand on windmill dam into the EU. We'll go down to international revenue down below.
Yeah, it's rather interesting. PepsiCo has been trying to grow internationally, as have other companies. And we often speak very positively about that because growth is occurring in developing nations. On the other hand, when you do that, you got to watch out because those nations are more vulnerable to economic upset, disequilibrium. And lo and behold, PepsiCo has made big investments in Russia and South America. It hasn't been quite as aggressive in China. But lo and behold, what has happened in foreign nations and developing nations in South America and India and Russia has not worked out to PepsiCo's in PepsiCo's favor. So we applaud PepsiCo for being internationally aggressive, and poor PepsiCo says, "All right, I did what you told me to. Now what do I do? Because here I am stuck in this damn rut." And our answer is, well, be patient. It'll get better.
So looking at the international revenue, in yellow there, gold, orange, that's 2017, red's 2018, and blue's 2019. As you can see, they're growing. Per area, the left side is their total and the U.S. share. And on the right side, some notable nations I picked out. China, they're growing. The UK, they've been steady. Canada, they're growing. Russia, steady. And Mexico, they're growing. This is their revenue. We'll go on to the next slide. Here's just some of their financials. As you can see, their operating margin was growing pretty well. In 2019, it started dropping. Again, they went through that little bit of trouble there with especially more struggles with Russia. It's caused a lot of their operating margin, their return on investments to sort of drop. and they have been able to pay off some of their long-term debt recent times. But again, they're struggling right now with that investment that they made in Russia really not paying off. But as Dr. Roney had said, they're going to have to play the waiting game for a little bit, and that will fix itself. So the next slide. So this is the leverage of the soft drink industry. So PepsiCo 66%, Coke 61%. One thing I found really interesting here is Monster's. Monster has zero debt. They've been able to pay for everything, but they haven't expanded. And we'll talk a little bit more about Monster later on, but that's a key thing for an acquisition target. You won't have to take on any additional debt if you were to acquire them. And Kellogg and them all a little bit higher, but the industry average because of Monster really dropped it. So in like an economic downturn, they may struggle. This chart's a repeat from earlier, just again to point out China's missing. And we'll talk more about why China's missing and how they could fix that later on. So this chart's just a repeat of from earlier.
So this is a repeat of the critical success factors for PepsiCo. So the success factors that they have is the market research and their product research and development, and to grow more internationally in the market.
Yeah, no, normally at this point, what we would do is rate PepsiCo versus its rivals. But I think you can probably draw some conclusions just based on what we've seen. We know that PepsiCo is a real powerhouse in marketing and media, so those things up at the top would all be very strong. But unfortunately, you've got it right. The leverage would be an issue for PepsiCo that would hold them back.
Next slide.
Okay, so this is part of their sales, just the brands. As you can see, PepsiCo is the worldwide retailer in sales in billions. They actually got over close to 20 billion in sales, and it's just different brands that they offer through PepsiCo.
Well, I think your title here is most important. These are billion-dollar brands.
Right.
Every one of these gets sells $1 billion, you know. So these are major brands, and PepsiCo's got 18 of them, which makes them a consumer products powerhouse.
Okay, so here's some of the strengths of PepsiCo. Of course, their brand, which their powerhouse, as Dr. Roney mentioned. Andrea Nouillet's contributions over the years to help them get to where they are today as far as selling more healthier products. And of course, the last one, the new CEO, Ramon Lagarde, he has been a part of the Pepsi team for quite a while. And he's also has very extensive knowledge about how to deal with international markets, being that he was an international leader for PepsiCo.
Yeah, he was president of 2 of their international divisions.
Okay, so here's some of the weaknesses of PepsiCo. The main focus, the main key point about this one is the low penetration in the international market. They're trying to expand as much as possible in an international market. But with the new CEO, they can come up with some different strategies of how they want to approach the international market to become successful.
I would like to ask a question. Who came up with this graphic? That is the funniest. Who did that?
I did.
Well, I don't know where you found it, but that's a good one. That looks like me in the gym.
So this is the organizational structure of PepsiCo. They have the CEO at the top, then they have different directors, CEOs of their different divisions. They have the PepsiCo Americas Foods. They have the beverages, and then they have an international. The key thing to look at here one international branch, an international business branch will not be enough. With them wanting to grow consistently, having just a branch for, hey, the Asia Pacific, the Europe branch, it's not going to be enough. They're definitely going to have to expand their corporate structure at the top to be able to efficiently manage and grow in these different regions.
Yeah,
We'll go to the next.
big challenge.
Okay, so here's some of the resources that PepsiCo has. They have an excellent management, of course, with their new CEO and other people who can contribute to their continue to contribute to their success. The main thing I want to talk about in this one is the power of one strategy. So the power of one strategy was based on the idea that selling snacks and beverages as a single portfolio that gives the company a stronger platform. So it gave Pepsi a stronger platform with selling both drinks, beverages, and snacks together.
Right, it's a major strength.
Next slide. So here's some of their resources that they have, the operands, which is the several things, how they get their products to where it needs to be and how they can make their products, such as the warehouse and equipment and the distribution system, which is a big factor for them.
Right, and as we've learned in this course, competitive advantage flows when you have superior operands and superior operants, right? And PepsiCo
Yes.
is blessed by having superior operands and superior operants, and therefore it enjoys in many markets competitive advantage. I'm not sure, but I think the exam probably dwells a little bit on the power of one. So we want to make sure that in this recording, we leave a little note for the people who aren't here to hear this presentation. Power of One was developed way back when I was at PepsiCo. And a guy named Steve Rennemood, who became the CEO, decided that just the way Jeremy explained, that the folks who were selling Frito and the folks who were selling Pepsi-Cola, it was sort of competing with each other. They weren't competing with each other, but when they got in the grocery store, they were competing for the store manager's time and for space on the shelf, and it just wasn't smooth. So Rennemood realized that in fact there was a chance to combine all of these resources, not just the snack foods and the beverages, but the shelf space in the grocery store, the space to put these point of purchase advertisements that you often see in grocery stores, PepsiCo's media advertising, to put that all together as a strategy where PepsiCo and the grocery stores sort of combine their resources and their efforts. And they called it the power of one. And as a result of that, PepsiCo has had a much more favorable position in grocery stores than Coca-Cola has. And so successful has that strategy been that it is still in effect. And gosh, I was there, I hate to tell you, it was what, in 1980, was that 30 years ago? But anyway, it's lasted this long because it's so powerful and so successful. Okie dokie, here we go with goals.
Now, next we have goals. And so for goals that we said that Pepsi achieved long-term growth, you can go ahead.
Okie doke.
And then, so why they achieved that is because Pepsi, they look into the future. They think, years ahead, they plan for long-term growth, and you can go ahead. And this picture that I found really, I got a good takeaway of how they build number one for brand recognition, because I know, most people can look at just a Pepsi symbol and know it's Pepsi. So that is one thing, how they achieved long-term growth, brand recognition. for different occasions. They come out with, you know, as you can see, the little snowman down here, little like boxes, trying to change things up. And, you know, Pepsi has grew, you know, not only just to sell drink products, but also like food products. You can go ahead. And then this is kind of like their motto, is faster, stronger, and better. And so Pepsi's main goal is they want to help build more sustainable food for agriculture, water. They want to better their packaging process and their production product process. And they want to achieve high quality with all of their products. And they want to focus, get things done right, and they want to have that positive customer experience, and that is just one way how they will grow in the future.
So this slide here is going to talk about the goals, the financial goals of PepsiCo in the future. As you can see, their goal is to reach 80 billion by 2024 in sales. We'll go to the next slide.
And to stay ahead of the competition.
Yeah, stay ahead. Here's just one breaking down just Pepsi alone. We can go ahead again. So here's PepsiCo's operating margin, return on equity, return on investment, and leverage ratio goals for going forward. The dotted line is 2019. So everything going forward is what they want to do. As you can see, some of it might be a pie in the sky that might not achieve it all, but that is their goal that they're shooting for. They want to sort of flatten out their operating margin, not let it drop any lower. They want to increase their return on equity. They definitely want to increase their return on investment when all this stuff, all the political crisis and everything slows down with Russia and China. And they want to decrease their leverage ratio and get in a better position there.
Yeah. And we need to credit Value Line, the investment service. And this is what Value Line's analysts believe PepsiCo is likely to pursue. So it's not, these are not pipe dreams. These are anticipations that professional analysts believe are at least within PepsiCo's capability, and probably the kind of things that PepsiCo is reaching for.
So here's the financial goals table. So I took their actual estimate for 2020 and then their goal. Then I took their amount that they're changing and then the percent that they changed.
And
so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to point out the big things. Their goal is they want to drop down that leverage about 16 points. 2024, they want to increase their equity by about 25%. They want to decrease their debt by about 45%. And they want to increase their sales by 17%. They want to continue growing, maintain their position.
This would certainly make the shareholders happy.
Yes, it would.
Because the company would be at lower financial risk, and the company's net worth would be more, which always makes the shareholders happy.
Mm-hmm. So PepsiCo wants to get some higher shares in the international markets. And this is, again, their goals. And their goals that they should strive to increase their shares in is in China, India, Russia, the European Union, and the Asian markets. How can they do that? They can go about it by acquiring firms in the areas, strategic alliances, and product variation.
Great slide. Great slide.
Thank you. So I broke down India. I went and found a chart about India's soft drink consumption. The only thing that threw me off about it is that Aquafina and Pepsi separate, as we all know from this discussion already, that they are one company. So if that's 23% of their soft drink consumption there, Pepsi's not doing terrible there. They do have room to grow, and there are different companies there that they could look at having alliances with or acquiring them if they're just local India companies. If Pepsi was to try and grow in India, they'd want to acquire an Indian firm. Due to the political issues that India currently has, they like to keep their products and goods local and Indian made.
That's wisdom.
So this one here talks about China and Asia. So
Sorry.
they're fine. So in China's the left side there, PepsiCo is pretty small in the snack food market. You have the Want group and some of the other Asian companies, and on the right side has different Asian countries and how Pepsi is currently sitting. With Laos, Pepsi's killing it. They're destroying Coke and they're doing well. Vietnam, Pepsi and Coke are about even. Cambodia, Pepsi's being destroyed by Coke. Pepsi's not performing the best, and they definitely have room to grow in these Asian markets.
Yeah, your comment on the starburst is right. PepsiCo is just not doing a very good job in Asia.
So PepsiCo wants to gain and maintain dominant position of non-carbonated drinks. As we talked about earlier, the consumption of carbonated drinks are declining. So society is shifting to non-carbonated drinks, to healthier alternatives such as naked juices. They've demonstrated this by purchasing Wimbill Dam, which is the dairy industry, and they have strong bottled water industries as Aquafina and SoBe. PepsiCo has the advantage in the industry already due to currently having a position with these companies. Next slide. Next one. So I'm not going to read all this just because it's pretty wordy, but the big thing to know, PepsiCo has to use all of the generic strategies to maintain their competitive advantage. They have to keep low costs across the board. They have to ensure their prices to smaller markets and to a variety of products. They have to differentiate their products due to the unique tastes and needs of their markets. And they must ensure their product line meets the needs of the smaller markets. Going. So the strategic objectives.
This is pretty much what you just said, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's paramount.
We've got to play a complete game and do it all. I do think that it's important to identify that once in a while you do the wrong thing at the right time. Differentiation and low cost are PepsiCo's game with an emphasis on differentiation. But we get to India and we got to focus because India's got tastes that are very unlike the United States and Europe, right? So we got to develop stuff that responds to those local market conditions. And we really haven't gotten too much into international strategy in this course, but the strategy we're looking at is called transnational, where we recognize that we've got to be globally standardized, and that's, of course, what PepsiCo does very well with its soft drink and snack foods. But we've got to respond to local market conditions when that is what's required, and India is a good example of that. Pardon me for jumping in on you there, but I think you did a great job with the prior slide. I was just trying to put a little punctuation on it for you.
Good. So I just broke this one down. I looked up at Pepsi and Coke. As you can see, Pepsi does have advantage in some of the North American areas, and some of the Asian markets, but Coke is pretty dominant around the world. So we'll keep going to the next slide. So here's some market share goals. You can see Coke wants to grow in international markets. They already have a place in them, and they just need to continue to grow.
I think this was a good slide because the measuring market shares in all these countries, very difficult to do, but sometimes you just don't need to be that precise. You say, okay, I don't have much of a market share in India, and damn it, my goal is to have a higher one. I would, if it were me, I'd have put medium/high or something like that. But I just think that you did the right thing in the way you presented you made this chart.
Okay. So this is just some stuff from the PepsiCo presentation that they had to their investors, and just sort of how they're going to go about going for 2025. I'm not going to dwell on it. You can see that they're trying to become more healthier and environmental friendly. And they want to deliver 4 key benefits to their customers: variety, ambiguity, I can't say it, value, and desirability. We'll keep going. We're going to talk about some of their strategies. So there's some key things that the industry must do. They have to get rid of some sugar. They need to use unique ingredients to get new flavors out there, and to have balanced nutritional, that package your products better. We'll keep going.
Okay, so we have the ASNOF matrix, and so with this, the biggest takeaway is you can see products that they already had, and they made changes to meet the consumer's needs and wants. And so you can see here, you know, they've took like the regular just Pepsi and made Pepsi Zero because, you know, people wanted to start eating healthier, drinking stuff that's healthier. And so this is just how they have took products and then came up with new products to meet market needs.
Yeah, look, Ansoff's matrix is intended to do one of two things. Either talk about how the company has grown in the past or how it intends to grow in the future. It's really called the Ansoff growth matrix. Okay, Professor Ansoff wanted to explain how companies grow. And for PepsiCo to grow, and the way it's grown in the past, is by using all four of these strategies, okay? Not just one, but all. Market penetration with advertising, media advertising, the cultivation of grocery stores, the one, what's it called? One, help me. One, the one, huh?
I'm sorry.
One,
You said
the one that I explained a couple of minutes ago.
power of one.
Power of one, thank you. Okay. And then obviously developing new products for existing markets, and then taking our existing products and moving them into new markets. And this is where the priority seems to lie going forward, because we've said that PepsiCo needs to develop new markets in new countries. Even if it's they're already there a little bit, they need to grow much more. So India is down here in market development, and so is Russia. Diversification is new products for new markets, and PepsiCo tried that, right? They tried it with Kentucky Fried, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell. They also tried it going into some goofy things. Back when I was there, they were doing stupid stuff. They bought North American Van Lines and Wilson Sporting Goods, and realized eventually that it was stupid, and they sold them. But it wasn't stupid to get into those fast food chains. It just turned out that they were stupid one way. They competed with their customers. Coke realized that and kicked them really hard. And so we had to divest Kentucky Fried, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. But the Ansoff growth matrix is a beautiful way to describe how companies grow.
And so this is just competitive advantages in market strategies for Pepsi. So one big advantage Pepsi has is that they do have a diverse products. And so with market campaigns that they do, they see, you know, like what I said, that helps them identify what, you know, changes they need to make within the company. What are consumers wanting to buy, like food wise or drink wise? Because I know one big thing was the soda industry had went really, you know, had declined because people were starting to drink more water, you know, use or drink healthier options. And so this is when they developed that better to.
I've got a video conference class that I'm in the middle of. I'm trying to wrap it up.
We're about done, guys. I promise.
If I can, I'm sorry.
We're about done.
Yeah, guys. Hold on.
Okay, I'll call you when I leave. Bye-bye. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
But so this has been, you know, like with Pepsi Zero, that was definitely a big or a good thing that they came up with, because, you know, many people started to buy, you know, the Pepsi Zeros because it was a healthier option than just buying the regular Pepsi.
Okay. If we can move a little faster, I'd sure appreciate it. I have an appointment, but also, you know, our schedule was an hour and a half, and we're pretty much past that. So we need to just pick up the pace a little bit if we can.
Okay. So some of the acquisition targets, I just wanted to point out: Rockstar Buy, Hostess, Treehouse Foods, Monster. Monster has Amity Debt. They'd be a good one. Hostess, they're a large snack company. Pepsi could acquire them and increase their snack market. Buy is a flavored water company. Treehouse Foods is important for international markets. In the international slides, you can see that they had smaller market shares, which help Pepsi out a lot. Let's go to the next slide. Unrelated diversification, they should not move into these because it has not worked for them in the past when they operated out. A lot of this is what Dr. Roney had already talked about. Pepsi or Coke asked them why the competition, or supporting the competition. Pepsi did recently purchase some tech and computer service company. They purchased 25% of it. Not sure why, could not really find why. I don't know if it's to improve their own systems or what, but I just figure that's something important to put in there.
That is interesting.
We'll go to the next slide.
We believe that Pepsi should move into a related diversification because they're very diverse of products that they do offer, and it gives them a competitive advantage over Coca-Cola and other companies. Next slide. All right, so here's some of the expansions that they have, the acquisitions that they have, the market expansion internationally through mergers and acquisitions, Tropicana, Gatorade, William Field Dan, which is the dairy products that they offer, and Rockstar Energy Drink. And the next one is Hansol Food Company. I can't pronounce that word, but they just recently acquired that company this year. So,
Okay.
Next slide, we're talking about product development. And to expand in international markets, the most developed products are agricultural tastes. So I listed a couple products there. And they need to ensure that they do not just try and put Pepsi in India. They need to make an Indian Pepsi. We'll keep going.
This just shows, you know, their products, how they developed over time, you know, from not really so healthy to more nutritious. You can go ahead. This just shows like basically the same thing, but with their food products.
Sure.
Okay, so Pepsi, this is just some of their tactics. Real quick, that they want to gain 100% sustainability sources. So gain in agriculture. They want to improve water efficiency. They want to design by the year 2025. They want to design 100% of packaging to be recyclable. So, you know, they're trying to find ways, you know, not with only within the company to improve, but to improve, to impact more of the world by recycling and just improving on water and agriculture.
Yeah, Mrs. Newye, before she retired, had a strong policy, a strong philosophy of implementing strategy so that PepsiCo was a positive contributor to society and to the world's ecology. And that's become not part of the strategy, but imposes limits on the strategy. And so What we're looking at here is PepsiCo's approach to implementing its strategy.
One from basically one takeaway I really got from this was that PepsiCo invested $100 million to provide about 2.5 million jobs for women. So they promote a very diverse like workplace.
Good.
Okay, and then this is basically what I just explained.
Okay.
So I put this in there the other night just because I thought it was important with how today's society is going. I'm not going to read these, but I am going to go ask Dr. Roney to go down to the why this matters. So if you want to drop down, I think it's 2 more slides if you guys want to read these on your own, because this is really important with how they're going to continue growing. Why this matters is PepsiCo's hiring more people. They're not laying them off. They're protecting them. They're saying, hey, if you get sick, we'll pay you full benefits until you're better. And they're really striving to solidify that they care about their employees. It shows that they're committed to serving their markets. It's demonstrating that they're a leader in the industry. It's boosting positive image, benefits society, because they're actually hiring instead of how most companies are closing their doors, they're shrinking their markets. PepsiCo is actually hiring an additional, I think it was 6,000 or 60,000 employees to serve their consumers better in case someone gets sick. So at the time of this crisis, how long it's going to last is undetermined. The strategy will allow Pepsi to continue growing. So this is why I included this, because it does matter with how this crisis is going. We'll drop down one more, and this is the final slide. So in conclusion, Pepsi is in a strong position to grow internationally. They're in a great position in non-carbonated drink industries and must maintain that position. If they do not maintain that position, they will struggle. And they need to adjust their spending to decrease their leverage ratio, and they have opportunities to grow further through acquisitions. And that is it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Boy, I am so impressed by what a great job you guys have done. I'm gonna stop this recording now because it takes a long time to convert it. And of course, the slides are the